Hello and welcome to the Blood and Pigment podcast. My name is Garrett Swader, and I'm here with Dan Carlson
Yo.
and Fernando Artiaga.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be back.
Yeah. We're on this episode going to be just doing kind of a laid back thing, talking about different factions that we really like. Decided, after Summer Plunder to take a load off a little bit of some of the heavier subjects we've been
Blood and breather.
Exactly. But yeah, and Fernando has been away for a while, if you've noticed. But I'm not quite sure I know where you've been and what you've been doing, Fernando. So why don't you let us in on what you've been up to lately?
So I was in my country, Mexico. So I was away for almost 2 months. So in that time, I didn't do any hobby, but I returned and I actually have done quite a bit. So, for example, last weekend I participated in this event with the Tyler Stone's group in Harrisburg, which is very close to where I live in Philadelphia. So I was part of this event, Great Swamp Fight, which is kind of it will be also played in Fall In here in Pennsylvania, which I think it occurs in November.
November 1st through the 3rd. I just looked it up for a minute, a few minutes ago.
So this was kind of a test of how it could go, and it went pretty well. I enjoyed. I think this is the first time that I played with the English, so it was English against natives, and it was fun. And besides that, I also been painting. So I painted some soldados, the old ones, Spanish soldados, and the 17th century ones, not the new ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I also painted the Spanish militia.
Your soldados, did you make them out of the plastic kits or did you do the old resin?
No, actually, it's the old resin one. So I am kind of trying to. I have many, but I do not like how I painted them back then, so I'm replacing them.
Okay, yeah, I get that. I've
fair.
done that with a couple of things.
So yeah, I've been done with that, and I also this is not related to Blood and Plunder, but I actually before going to Mexico, I actually played for the first time Oak and Iron, and
Nice.
I kind of enjoyed it. So I know that they're going to be kind of a second edition. I don't know if that's the case or not. So I have not bought the core box, but I bought the galleon, the largest one. So I'm in the process of painting that one.
Cool. I've painted one of the galleons already, and then I've got another one sitting over here that I need to start working on, but I've been doing some different stuff. I can go into what I've been up to lately. I've been slowly but surely getting this galleon done. I am finished up on like the big parts of it, and I'm just going back through and like getting the details on it. Like, the little rails on the sides to where it's like they're raised and it kind of looks bad if you just paint the outside of it. You want to get like on the lip as well. I'm like going through and doing that. I don't know if anybody else does that, but that's what I've been doing. As far as hobby stuff, I've also been trying to put together some plastic maroons because my store's group is going to start doing a escalation league here coming up pretty soon. And I was thinking try something new, try something different, because the format for this, we're going to try to make it to where you can start off with a very small amount of models, and then month by month you increase your point level for the games that you play, and you can very easily add to what you started with, and by the end of it you've kind of got a full force built. So I wanted to do something kind of different, so I went with or think I'm going to probably do maroons, and so I've been putting together some of those guys with muskets. I think it's the Chroma T Warriors, or I don't know if I'm saying that exactly right, but it's the new Raise the Black Maroon unit that's like a bajillion points, but the stat line is super good.
So can you do that with the indigenous plastic kit?
Yes, yeah, that's what I'm doing. There's some African heads that come with that. I'm using some muskets from the sailor kit and the muskets that come with that kit, because I think there's only like 3 muskets that come on a sprue with those guys. So you're a little bit at a deficit for muskets, but most of the sailors that I've put together do not have muskets on them, so I've got a surplus of sailor muskets.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
My sailor's bits box is endless.
Yeah, but yeah, the general gist of the event is you're going to start out, we're going to have like 60-point games. So I envision people making forces with like 3 units of 4 guys just to start out. And then it'll go up from there. You'll go to 100-point games, and then you'll go to 150-point games. And I think we're going to cap it off with like 200-point C games, possibly at the end. We'll see. So it's going to be like a 3 or 4 month type thing, to where you'll draw a person's name, and you'll have to be you're obligated to try to get a game in with that person during that month.
Sounds like a blast.
Yeah. What's been going on in your world, Dan?
So I haven't touched Plunder since Summer Plunder ended. I said we're taking a blood and breather. I'm doing anything but at this point. So the entire month we had what we call the blood and breather, where we were playing every other game. So I played some Valor. For Blood and Crowns, I actually painted up 3 demo forces, which consisted of 4 boxes of Perry miniatures. After I got them assembled, it only took me 13 days to paint all like 136 models. I just sat down, made sure I painted a certain amount, every day, and I got them all done, and they look fantastic. So now I have lots of demo forces for Crowns, which I'm very, very excited for.
So, Dan, a question. I have a question, and be honest. Which game do you think is best?
So, between the ones that we have, I personally like Plunder the best because I think it has the most flavor. I think there is a very wide variety of units. There's a wide variety. It's more complex, and in my opinion, playing it for so long, it's harder to get down like for a tournament rules wise, because there's so many different working parts. But it is my favorite out of all of them because the sheer depth that the gameplay has. Valor and Crowns all have their own little things. Crowns is more melee oriented, so they have little things like you can fight back in melee when you're charged at the cost of fatigue, which is awesome. Valor is I consider it beer and pretzels. If you play Plunder for 3 months and you want something very simple to just kind of play and relax to, Valor is very easy to just kind of pick up and play. Every one of them has its quirks, but right now Plunder is still my favorite.
Okay, good to know that I played the best one.
I didn't say best, I said favorite, because different strokes for different folks. So I painted all those up for Crowns. Eric Hansen's been sending me stuff for the next expansion to kind of look at, so I've been helping him out with that, just kind of giving feedback and testing. Rufus is setting up for Blood and Bayonets. So he sent me some stuff. It didn't send me specifically. There's a playtest group for that. I've been kind of reading through the books. I'm interested in the naval aspect of it, so I'm kind of critiquing that, looking at it, trying to help get that in an awesome direction. Not that it's not. It's fantastic. Rufus definitely knows how to write a game. He's great, fantastic. Love you, Rufus. And then on top of all of that, went out and shot some black powder guns. It's on the blog now. It was a lot of fun. It's in an article. You should go look at it because there's lots of videos that I took, and they're super fun, to the point where I'm working on making my own slow match right now for my match lock.
Cool.
And then, other than that, just been working on my Northern War stuff for the Great Northern War. Recombined the land and the sea into one big, juicy document. So I've just been filling out those scenarios. The scenarios and historical forces are done. I just have to get into testing. So once this goes live, if you are interested in testing that and you are an avid Plunder player, I need people who have groups to play with, hit me up and I will send you some stuff to test, because I need lots of people to test these scenarios and make sure they are good. But I'm getting that done. It is so close to being done. It is so close. It's tantalizingly close. I'm just trying to get it done as fast as possible. 3-year project, and I'm glad it's almost over.
Yeah, it's always good to finish something.
And to finish something that's going to be in the game that I love so much. That's the big part. Is this is a huge labor of love.
Right.
But that's what I've been doing. We're doing Cowboys this week for a Warhammer historical, and then next week we're hitting Plunder again.
There you go.
So is it Warhammer Old West?
I think so. One of the guys in my group, Pete, he has the rule book and brings he's got a whole terrain setup. He just says bring your butts and get in seats. So he's building me a U.S. cavalry list that may or may not have a Gatling gun. So I'm super excited.
Sounds fun.
But I know it's Warhammer Historicals.
I wanted to comment on your recent article with the black powder stuff. Fantastic, by the way. I read it. You mentioned that the matchlock was much more reliable than most of the flintlocks to actually fire.
Yeah.
I saw the same thing at the reenactment this past March. Like, there were a couple of guys there that had flintlock muskets, and the matchlocks always shot. And then there were a couple of times where the flintlocks misfired. So it's like, that rings true in my experience as well.
Yeah, it was really, really interesting. The flintlocks on my pistol ended up having a piece of patch right where the touch hole is, so it wouldn't go off until we got a worm down there. We were able to figure that out. But with the flintlocks, if you don't keep the flint sharp, there will not be sufficient spark to, ignite the powder or light the powder, but not enough. There's a lot more moving parts. It's technically better in the rain, and it's safer because you don't have, a piece of lit cord with gunpowder so close to your face. But yeah, the matchlock went off every single time. Both the hand cannon, the little cannon on a stick, and the arquebus, which I figured you'd like, Garrett, because that was something that the Spaniards basically carried into Middle America.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's what I thought was really cool with the crossbow trigger and everything. But yeah, they were much more reliable and went off every single time. After we kind of figured out where the match needed to be to directly go into the pan, it went off every single time.
Yeah. So to explain a little bit better what we're doing here for this episode, we're going to go down and mark our top 3. This is just personal lists for us. And I don't think we're doing this for what lists we think are the best lists. It's just what we have the most fun playing, or what we like list building the most for. I know that was a big thing for me, is what I like list building with. But factions in the game, and when I say factions, I'm talking about Spanish militia or Guardacostas or Brethren of the Coast, not just pirates or Spanish or French, that sort of thing. But yeah, we're gonna go around the horn. I can go first with the land lists. My number 3 is not a Spanish list. It's almost a Spanish list. It's really close, but Portuguese, Brazilian tercios and militia. I was looking through some of the lists that I like to list build for, and I was just re-looking at this and thinking wow, this has got a lot of stuff in it. This got a lot of layers. You can put a Reformado on a horse. That's cool. You've got the new Jewish militia as support. You've got Milicianos Indios with muskets. It's just it's got some cool flavor. It's even got European pikemen down there in support. It's got a lot of cool stuff. You could put some European sailors as core units and run it as a C list if you really want to. But yeah, I like it. I've played it a couple of times. It's been fun. That's my number 3. I think I probably wanted to do something other than a Spanish list on one of these. So that's my non-Spanish one that I've played before that I really like.
So there are 2 options. I think the one that you're referring is Portuguese Brazilian tercios.
Yes.
So there are 2 options. Do you have any one that you prefer? Guardacosta. Well, Guardacostas is for.
I usually don't pick either one of them, because I do really like the old European soldiers, and I don't believe with the Jewish militia, I don't believe you can take those.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, it says no European soldiers. Now, I've not played with the new points for Jewish militia, and I think they really did get a lot better. So that might be a really good option to take them as a core unit, but you do have to take 2 of them. So that kind of limits you there.
You want to go next, Fernando?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. So again, I usually play most of the time, if not all of the time, Spanish, but I wanted to have a non-Spanish force, so I went with Canadian militia. So I was just telling you the story, but let me retell it again for the audience. So when I started kind of playing Blood and Plunder, I would say more than 2 years ago. So I attended this tournament here close to Philly in a store in Maryland called Critical Hit Games. And I faced this list, the Canadian militia, and back then I did not know a lot of the rules, but I kind of was impressed and it was quite fun. So I tried the list, and yes, it's powerful, but it is fun. So I've not played the new one. I've not played the Raise the Black, but mostly because, of course, now you have added the Native Americans that now we have are basically Native North Americans. This Canadian militia list is mostly it uses mostly the Caribbean Americans. So, but given that it has access to those Caribbean Americans, it can be pretty powerful. Mostly because their special rule is that once per turn, a unit in the force can actually take a free move action, and so it can move quite fast. So you can move from point A to point B like if it were cavalry. So it can actually it can hit quite hard if you are unsure about how this works. And when you add the warriors, the native warriors, with thrown weapons, I've always been kind of a fan of thrown weapons because its ability to reroll in charges. So I enjoyed that. I don't know why, but I mean, some of you may know, but I am quite aggressive in how I play. So this guy is just going, and warriors do not have any ranged weapons. Well, you can give them muskets and you can give them bows, but I don't think it works. Just a powerful melee force that hits you hard. I think it's good enough, and the Canadian militia is good for that.
Apply the bonk.
Yeah. No, and I almost put the French Caribbean militia on my list because that's another one. That's another non-Spanish list that I like, and I think I do like it so much. I like French units as well. They're like my number 2 favorite faction, and I do really like that special rule that the movement is at the end of your activation, but it gives you a lot of flexibility on where you want to set up your units and stuff. So it can give you that extra little bit there, and it's a free move, so it doesn't count towards your 8-inch max for your fatigue. So I think it's a super good rule and super interesting rule too. It's not just like, oh, you're always going to do this and it's always going to be a good idea to do it. It's like you've got to make a decision with it, So
yeah, the fact that it's at the end of the action is what makes this not overpowered.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, when you use warriors which have quick, then you have 2 free move actions. So that means that they are almost like cavalry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They're the cavalry on foot. I've used them a couple times, and it does really feel like you've got a cavalry unit out there that save on 6s.
As opposed to 7s or 8s.
Yeah, 7s or 8s usually for horses.
So yeah, there are better cavalry. That's my number 3.
Okay, what's your number 3, Dan?
All right, my number 3 is actually I call it a weird one because it's not one that I see that gets played a whole lot, but it is the Dutch North American militia. So it's not the Caribbean militia; it's the guys who are up in North America. I really like this. I played my first few land games with this force because I came in right before No Peace, so everything was on the force builders that's I was using. It's kind of like the jack of all trades if you want to build like a woodland force, but you also want to have some professionals. They have the usual, military, and then boss sloppers, which are basically like Dutch woodsmen. They're really, really cool. But then you get Soldaten or European soldiers as core. So they got solid core units. So if you don't want to be like a professional soldier, you can have a bunch of these guys who are just running around the woods. They have skirmishers and scouts and cutting, which is kind of a cool combination. They have all 3 for 5 points small. They can take thrown weapons. And they got a good shoot score and shoot save of 6. So it's really cool. They're fun to model. And it kind of changes things up. When I usually play on land, I usually prefer like a gun line. I'm really finding that I like guys who can kind of move around, take shots, pop out of cover, take a shot, and scoot back into cover. Kind of get that range band down by 4 inches.
Do you have like a special commander that you like in this force?
As far as the commanders go, I tend to stick with the standard.
Okay.
I'm pretty vanilla like that. They have a couple that are really cool, but I tend to like I like the standard commanders more nowadays because I like to be able to build my commander for the job that I need, and they're usually a better value in my opinion.
Right. Yeah.
And most people play the Dutch at sea.
Yeah, I was going to mention that on mine that I don't really have a commander that I really like for the Portuguese Brazilian faction. So I was going to mention commanders for each one. I don't know if you had a commander that you liked on yours, Fernando.
Yeah, no, not really the standard one as well.
Yeah, I'm going to have one later for mine, but not these original ones. Okay, so another question I was going to ask you is, did you ever? I was looking at their special rules for Dutch North American militia.
Mm-hmm.
That rule is one that I would absolutely forget if I played this faction. I would have to write that down and paste it to my face.
So when we play, we have our forces printed out and in front of us specifically to prevent that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I do too, but it's still it can be sitting there. But I'm worried about playing. I'm not worried about counting strike point. I'm just saying that's a rule that I will forget.
Yeah, it's kind of like Fernando's thing. I tend to veer away from forces that have a lot of rules because it's a lot to remember. But that one is so good because you can choose. This is inspired from Guy. If you want to knock some free fatigue off and it's an objective game, you can back up the objective for a turn, gain a strike point, and knock fatigue off of everybody. It's great.
Yeah. No, yeah, I can. It's good, but it's just one of those things where I looked at it and I would be like, oh, I would absolutely forget that unless I played this a lot and force myself to remember it. Okay.
Yeah, I really like them. They're really cool, and like I said, a lot of people don't tend to play Dutch on land. And I'm here to challenge everybody who plays Dutch at sea, play them on land. They're really cool.
Yeah, I think the Dutch have some really strong units that came out in Raise the Black for land games.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what it was called, and pronouncing Dutch units is a nightmare sometimes. But it's the one that starts with a V. It's like
the Vrij Kompingen, something like that. I apologize for our Dutch viewers. Actually, no, you'll beat us in Summer of Plunder. No, I'll mispronounce it all day.
But those guys are amazing. They've got such a good stat line. They've got tough and ruthless for some reason.
Yeah, they're good.
Wow. Okay, so moving on, we'll get into my number 2 is Spanish Mission Garrison. I really love the flavor in this one. They're my boys. I love them. The Milicianos Indios de la Florida.
Mm-hmm.
They are terrible, but what they're good at is not dying because they have a 6 save. And they can shoot bows like nobody's business and put fatigue on. They probably won't kill very many people, but it's just a very flavorful faction to play, and it's super historical for what I'm interested in as well. For the Queen Anne's War, Florida Georgia conflicts that they had near where I live, and so that adds to it a little bit. But it's super fun. But I know it gets some Cav options for support that I like. Soldados de Avanzada are pretty good when you don't have any other soldier option. They're not bad. I think you can also get Milicianos Indios, just the regular guys on support. Yeah. And yeah, just some decent support options. But your main force and what you're going to take the most of is those 3-point mission Indians that shoot bows like crazy.
Do you usually play it with Angel Miranda as a commander or a standard commander?
Okay, so this is a little bit of a debate. I like the 10-point commander over.
My God.
Yes. They're both 10 points, and I'll tell you why. I always take the mission priest with this, and it always bugs me that Miranda has inspiring, and so that overlaps with the mission priest. Miranda also has only 1 command point, so the mission priest gives him 2 when you add him, because that's one of the special rules with this is if you have a priest in your force, your commander automatically gets an extra command point up to a maximum of 3. And so when you do the standard Spanish commander, you have 8-inch command range with 3 command points. You can get inspiring with the mission priest that you're already taking, and then you can use your optional rule for something else like bold or swordsman. So, or well equipped if you want to take a unit and take poorly equipped off.
No, I totally agree with you. Before Raise the Black was released, I thought this was going to be a faction that I really enjoyed. And to be honest, I don't enjoy playing with that with the faction that much. And I think Father Angel Miranda is kind of a trap as well.
I think he's got some upside, but I don't think he's as good as just the 10-point commander.
Yeah, I agree. On paper, he has a lot of good characteristics, but the fact that he only has 1 command point, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a completely different ball game if they gave him 2, because then I would be less miffed about the fact that I paid for a mission priest with inspiring, and then my commander already has inspiring on him. But why is it that you don't enjoy playing this, if I can ask?
I don't know. I think after Raise the Black was released, I really got caught on the idea that the Spanish could play with elite forces rather than massive units of guys that die easily. I don't know. I don't enjoy playing with the Milicianos Indios de la Florida.
Okay.
They are bad. I don't know.
They're not that bad. They're bad, but they're not that bad. You just take a bunch of them.
They are chaff. They are chaff. So I don't know. I mean, yes, they don't die from shooting.
Yeah.
But I mean,
yeah, tell me about it.
The thing is this: I like to go and do melee stuff.
Yeah,
and these guys fight with 7.
No, yeah, I totally understand it. Yeah, this is more of a wear them out type list.
Yeah,
you gotta bob and weave and make it to the end, and really just, and you gotta have like finisher guys in your list. You're not just going with these guys. You've got to have pieces in there, and you've got to protect those pieces to finish them out, to finish off your kills.
So I've tried playing the mission garrison with having the Caballeria Lancero as a finishing unit, but still, I will mention my list later on because it's one of my favorite ones. I prefer the normal crab militianos compared to these guys. They are more aggressive. They kill more. So yeah, I don't know. It does not fit my playstyle, I think.
I know what list you're talking about, and I have played that list, and it is amazing. I will give you that. So, but we can move on to your number 2 list. What's your number 2?
My number 2 is just Spanish Army.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of a regular Spanish army, a lead force of Spaniards, just soldados and granaderos. I wrote an article kind of detailing how I played already. It's in Blood and Pigment site. And what I enjoy a lot about it is, as Dan was saying, is that it is pretty straightforward in terms of not having a lot of rules. Honestly, I think if I were a better player, I think I would play natives. But natives have a lot of quirky rules and interactions that sometimes get confusing. And I fail to remember things. And all of the units have these kind of interactions. Again, if I were a better player, I think I would play that because I really enjoy the idea of doing that stuff. It's just that I forget. So the Spanish army is total opposite. It's quite straightforward. You push ahead, they get shot. A few die because they are pretty good, and you just kind of move forward, and the enemy will be killed. I like that idea.
Didn't you kick ass with these guys at Adepticon?
Yeah, that's the faction that I use at Adepticon, and that was a strategy because the army factions from Raise the Black, basically they can spend 2 command points, and basically all of the army, or if you are within the command range, all of the army either can basically commit 1 action, but you use it by moving the all of them. So you can move quite fast, these elite units. they will be at risk because they will move in the open and they will get shot by, but these guys are elite. So some of them will survive and they will kick ass in the melee.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
That's my playstyle.
Yeah, I showed up to Adepticon as the Lantern was going on, and I saw you playing Tyler, and Tyler just looked up and said, "I'm getting stabbed a lot."
Yeah.
Not even by sockets, by plugs. You fired, inserted the plug in the gun, and said, "Now it's just a spear. Have fun."
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I like to do that.
I also really like the Spanish army, and that it was very close to making my list. One of the things I really like about it is list building it, because it has the special rule in list building. You can take an extra support unit more than you would normally be able to take. And so, like, in a 150 point game, you're usually taking 2 core units and 2 support units. And you can do a lot of different things like that. One of them being, like we had talked about, warriors before. You can do the little warrior cav. That's pretty good. I know in your list you took,
Granadero.
yeah, two of the just professional grenadiers, which helps you with your other special rule that I think it has to be like expertly drilled units.
Yeah.
Can only take those. So yeah, all of your guys are expertly drilled, so all of them can benefit from that platoon action. So that's super good. But yeah, it's got a lot of options with supports, and you can take extra ones, which helps because your units are so expensive too. So like in a normal point game, you're not getting 2 support units if you can only take 1 per 2 core, but in this faction you can.
Yeah, that's the main difference between the Spanish army and the other factions' armies, because all of them can issue platoon actions. But the special rule of the Spanish is that you can have an extra support, which really makes a difference.
Yes. That's like that's the cherry on top with this one. You can take cav as well. Yeah.
Yep.
If you don't like warrior cav, you can just take regular cav. But yeah, super solid choice. Like I said, it was close to being on my list too, but just off. What is your number 2, Dan?
My second favorite land force is French Raiders. I built them on a whim because I saw the movie Prey and was like, "Hey, those grimy Frenchmen look kind of cool." And then I saw them in the Raise the Black, and then I think it was before Raise the Black. Actually, I can't remember, but I know they were in Fire on the Frontier, and their units are really cool. They were some of the last metal models I had before I had to sell them for money. The ultimate war gamer thing when you got to sell a painted army, but they're really, really cool. They're kind of a jack of all trades. You can build a completely good shooty force and stand in the bush and shoot, or you can kind of hybridize that because they get access to some of the really good North American native units. So if you like to shoot and bonk, they can shoot and bonk. Just about everybody, I think, in here can go ahead and take thrown weapons, which is awesome. They got the awesome 4-point Milici Kennedine for 4 points, and they come with Marksman, Scouts, and Elusive with a 6 shoot and a 7 save for a 7 shoot save. They are really, really good at shooting, and they get Braves and Young Braves for core. So it's really, really awesome. If you want to build something that'll go through the brush that will hit, they will do that. They're really cool. They're again kind of that balance between usually wanting to run a gun line, but hiding in light cover and kind of sniping and raining hell down on people with accurate musket fire is something I didn't really do until I played the French Raiders. They got some of the most powerful units as core. So they got Nieces, which are really, really nasty when they get into close distance. Anybody who's been on the receiving end of a Nieces charge kind of knows what I'm talking about. But they're cool. The models look really cool. They're war metal, now they're all resin and they look even better. So it really kind of stands out because when you think Blood and Plunder, most people kind of think pirates or they think Caribbean, and then when you see a bunch of really gross looking Frenchmen on the board and some native allies, they look awesome.
Yeah, and I don't think you mentioned this, but one of the really big factors for this faction specifically is if you take as many native units as you do European units, everybody gets quick.
Yep.
And that's super good.
How's the next bit is that they can move.
yeah, you have 2 units that you want, like they're good units that you want to take as core that are native units. So it's like, yeah, why would I not do that?
So let me counteract that a little bit. I mean, I'm not saying that is bad, but whenever I kind of have, whenever these kind of rules are present, in the sense that the same rule applies to everyone, I always feel like I am not maximizing its potential. In the sense, what I'm referring to here is, so if I want a unit that is quick, then I will have a unit that is quick. But if everybody has quick, then quick loses its appeal, and I still only have one card that will actually provide me with quick. It seems like, I don't know, because all of these are expensive units. I mean, the Nices, the Coureur de Bois, the Compagnie French de la Marine, even the Braves are expensive. So this is kind of an elite unit. And if everybody shares kind of the same rule, it makes me, I mean, yes, it gives you kind of potential to not to make mistakes and to have everybody, whatever unit you want to activate with quick. But still, I think I always feel with these kind of rules that I am not kind of maximizing. I don't know if I'm expressing myself well.
I think you are. I think what makes the difference for it with me, and when I have this situation where it's like quick is one of those rules, and I think I know what you're coming from, is like you want a unit in your force that has quick and really can maximize using quick. And that's
Yes,
the only unit that has quick. So
correct.
that if you get a spade, you know exactly who's getting that spade.
Yeah, that's correct. It also makes you easy to make the decisions within the game. Like you got a spade, and you know that this guy has quick. You know what to do. But if
Right.
everybody has quick, first it's a missed opportunity in the sense that this is a rule that could be changed. I mean, this is a special rule, so other factions have other special rules. So in that way, it's kind of there are pros and cons of that. And so I think I'm missing out.
Right. I think in this case, since you're getting it just from the faction that you're playing and you're just putting it on everybody, I think I understand what you're saying is like it gives you maybe analysis paralysis when you're sitting there like and you have one spade and it's like, okay, who am I going to activate and get the extra move with? But it's all upside because I don't see a situation to where I'm building a list from this faction to where it's not going to be at least half native units. So everybody's going to get quick anyway, and that's just gravy on top. It's not like the ideal way to get quick, but it's still like just upside.
Yeah. So I don't know very well the French forces, but there is not another faction where you could actually get the same kind of unit, but that it has a different special rule. I mean, unless you really, really want everybody to have quick. Like, is there a strategy where do you want, I don't know, the nieces to have, do the nieces have quick by themselves? No.
I don't think any of the North American natives have quick by themselves. So I mean, that's something like nieces have a similar profile to just like the warriors.
Yeah.
So you could kind of make them out into that type of unit if you give them quick.
Yeah, I can
That's what I'm
see.
saying. Like it's not bad.
No,
It's
I'm not
not
saying it's bad.
optimal,
I'm not
but
saying it's
yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of, given that I do not know the French really factions, I do not know if there's another way to build kind of the same list, but in another.
What's your opinion on this, Dan? The person that put this list on his list.
So I thought quick, I think, is good on everything because it either allows you to move up, or if you need to, fall back to a position, that's a free extra move you can get on a spade if you really got to go. So what I would do if I was prioritizing charging, like, I really wanted to surprise somebody, because everybody's got quick, so your opponent has to realize everybody has quick. So, they think, oh, a lot of people say, oh, I'm safe from that French unit. And then it's like, well, you got 2 fatigue on your soldiers there, and my Coureur de Bois have thrown weapons. They're not great in melee, but you can't shoot back at me, and they have quick this turn. So we'll go ahead and do that. And they go, oh, wait, that hurts. So it, on top of giving, kind of analysis paralysis, I guess, to your opponent, because he's got to deal with everybody having quick, it's not really for me spade, this is automatically going to go to someone. I kind of play turn by turn and say, all right, who needs to book it or who needs to move back.
Well, and you kind of have to with this faction because everybody's going to have quick, so it's going to be a round to round decision unless you just get all spades, and it's like, oh well, that could be a horrible hand for you, but
Yeah, but also
everybody's gonna
everybody
go
in this
fast.
force has scouts. So that also means you get to ignore terrain for movement, basically. You ignore the the mines from moving through terrain. So everybody gets to move through that terrain, which also makes the whole force really speedy. What I typically did is I would set up a firing line between, the French commander would have cold-blooded, and I set him up with the military, and then either the coup de bois or the company French de la Marine, and that would be kind of like the range support, and I have the two native units close together, scooting up the other side to provoke charges, or I've had someone try to close in on them, so I kind of move them back, and they put themselves in the open, and then I use quick to move a unit up and then shoot from another range band. And being shot out the open really sucks. So it kind of lets you play both sides, really. You got good range and good melee. You can build an all-range list if you really want to, or you can take, all native units of the French commander if you really wanted to. And giving cold-blooded to some of these native units is really nasty.
Yeah. A lot of the French Canadian lists feel like a native list just with European support most of the time.
And don't get me started on the Canadian privateers at sea. That is one of the best musket lists in the game right now because you got a 4-point model with marksmen that you can put a bunch of them on a boat. It's gnarly. So the North American lists are definitely worth looking at if you haven't already.
Yeah, definitely. So I can go ahead and...
What's your number one?
Number one is the OG Spanish militia. This is like comfort food for me because the thing I really like about the Spanish is the vast number of options I get for cool different models and weapons and just neat things that you can do. And the original Spanish militia and the reformed Spanish militia to some degree is just options galore. And so you can sit here and just do a ton of things list building. Many of them probably are not that great, but it's all fun. And so you've got, if you want a skirmisher, you got the hostigadores. If you want pikemen, we got pikemen. If you want cavalry, we got cavalry. If you want lanceros, we've got lanceros. If you want soldiers, we can go to the options and give soldiers to you for core. And then look, we've also got warriors and some of the Caribbean native units just pop up in there when you go to La Florida. It's just a ton of options that you can do. If you want to take a field gun like a madman, you can do that. Yeah, it's the original. I think it was the original faction that I looked at the most, and I still come back to it a lot when I'm list building. So, yeah, it's my number one.
Any special sub-faction like La Florida or Guerrilla Fighters?
Yeah, I usually go back and forth between those two. I don't usually run the Caballero Lancero as core, so I don't pick that one that much. So yeah, it's usually La Florida or Guerrilla Fighters, and it's usually depends on, do I want Milicianos Indios as core or do I want Soldados as core?
I see. Yeah, I think that the early appeal of, I think this was most relevant prior to Raise the Black, but the early appeal of the Spanish was that they had access to very specific units that were very heterogeneous. They weren't really unlike other units the other factions had.
Right.
Yeah, I think both the last and the last Summer of Plunder last year and the one from this year, I want to say they were probably the most played faction for the Spanish. I know last year was. I don't know if it was this year, but I know last year, of all the games played, most of the Spanish games were Spanish militia.
Yeah, it's just so flexible,
and they're fun to fight against. You never know what you're going to fight.
Mm-hmm. It could be something terrible, and it could be something pretty good. Depends on what you want to build. Depends on what flavor you want to go with. As far as commanders for these guys, I typically keep it cheap with these guys as well. But there's a lot of options for commanders. Speaking of options, there's a ton of options for commanders for these guys. So there's a in the next episode when we do the C lists, there's a guy on here that I'm going to be talking about with my C list of something that I'm planning on running that I haven't yet that I really want to try, but we'll save that for the next episode. Any more comments on my number one pick? If not, we can move on to Fernando's number one.
Okay, my number one is kind of the evolution of your favorite one. So it's the Reform Spanish Militia. So the new one.
Yeah, I really like that one too. Like it's super good.
And specifically, what I like and what is really different from the old one is this specific sub-faction called Far-Flung Outpost. I won't say this one. I don't think is the most optimal to play. I just think it's pretty fun for me in terms of what can I do with it. So let me read kind of the special a rule of this faction. All units in this force gain the tough special rule when attempting to reload. All units in this force must roll 1 die for each reload action taken. On a 5+, the reload marker is removed, otherwise the action is wasted. And you cannot include Soldados Reformados. So basically, they have the worst equipment out of all of the Spanish militia. So not only they have poorly equipped, but even when with that, they may not even reload, but they have tough. So given that my strategy in my playstyle is basically melee oriented, I do not care because what I want to do is shoot once and then charge. And the miliciano, and this is what I like the Milicianos Reformados compared to the faction that you mentioned last time, which is your second favorite one, the Milicianos Indios.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Milicianos Reformados, the regular ones have a fight of 6/6. They die like flies when they get shot by, and that sucks. But when they actually attack, they are good, and they are pretty cheap. So I have a lot of them, and then my finishing unit is one Caballeria Lancero, which is ready to actually sweep the remnants of the other guys. I don't know. I really enjoy playing that thing.
I've done that once myself, and it is super fun. It's like my favorite. If I want to be competitive and play a swarm, that's what I play because those guys, tough takes them to another level.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, if we're talking about competitiveness, the issue, and I think this is the main issue with all the cavalry, is that it's very much dependent on the terrain.
Yeah, that's absolutely You can wind up on a table that is completely terrible for the units that you've brought, especially if it's cavalry.
Yeah, if you have a lot of buildings, a lot of forests with with tough terrain or rough terrain, then it is quite hard. But if you have a lot of open plains, yeah, it's pretty good.
The list I played with this, it didn't have cavalry because I didn't have them at the time. I didn't have them ready, painted. I did Milicianos Negros with lances. That was my finisher unit. That worked pretty well.
Yeah, the Milicianos Negros I haven't played with them as much as I would like to because they are like cheaper than the old Lanceros. They are not as good, but still quite good.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting unit.
And I think that might have also been before the cavalry points update to where they got cheaper. I think now, if you're playing that list, you absolutely take the cavalry over those guys. But yeah, that's a super fun, super good list to play. I don't know how good it is to play against, but go back a couple of episodes when we were talking about playing swarms versus elite units, and we'll give you some tips on how to beat it. But yeah, tough on Milicianos is very good. Just don't even read that special rule. Just know that you're not going to reload. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
Just don't do it. Don't reload.
Reloading is for suckers with this faction.
You know what you could have done instead of failing that reload? Moved forward.
Yeah. That's the strategy. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, any comment on that, Dan?
No, he kind of hit everything on the head. It's one of the few Spanish factions I've kind of looked at and gone, I would like to play this. I just don't have the minis for it. But they look really kind of memey with that, oh, shooting, you don't need to do that. But when you're looking at the core units and everything, like the fact that you could take an entire cavalry force and they all have tough is really silly. And your cav has brace of pistols, so again, reload doesn't need it. And then you can bring cavalry, then bring the freaking Lancero cavalry that also gets tough.
Yeah, that is true. That's something that I have not yet done, like Blade with an all cavalry list. Mostly because I actually, even though I have a lot of cavalry, I don't have enough to actually play an all cavalry list.
Sounds like you got to get more.
Yeah.
Another thing you could do with that far-flung outpost is just don't play anybody with a musket. Just play Lanceros. You could even bring the cavalry that have brace of pistols because they don't get reloads, so you don't have to reload them. You can just stick lances on your Milicianos Negros. Yeah, there's a lot of different options. That's definitely the highlight, I think, of the Reformed Spanish militia. If you want really good flavor for any of the options on those, you can also play Reformed Spanish militia as a sea force if you want to. There's probably better options to play sea forces, but if you want to. And then guerrilla fighters also returns. So, but yeah, it's super fun. It's another one that could have very easily made my list, but I liked the I went with the heart choice of my original Spanish militia and all the options that it gave me. Okay, Dan, what is your number one list?
So my number one list for land, it was going to be the same as my sea, but I nixed that because we're going to talk about it when I go over sea. I didn't want to mention the same faction twice, which I'll get into that on the sea one because that faction also be played on land. But a pure land faction, the new Race of Black Dutch Caribbean Militia. Hands down. I kind of played them before, but after the no peace errata and they dropped the cost of cav and Jewish militia, like they are so good. They have so many. It's kind of like it's like your Spanish militia. They have so many fun toys to play with. You have lots of different ways to build lists, and they are just they're great. They're the most traditional list that I would play on land because you typically want to build a gun line. But you can take cav if you want to build an all cav list. I specifically got like 3 boxes of cav to make a list that's got 2 main units of cav because I've been wanting to play cav, but they were expensive and not plastic. So they have access to European regulars, which is really, really good. I like it. And then the fact that you can also, it's not an either or, you can take those or the later Soldaten, which is the Dutch professional soldier. I always take at least a unit of those as a command unit typically because they are just so good. But you can also play it as a frontier patrol. So you'll get the infamous Virage Compagnon and Warrior Musketeers for core units, which again, those guys are awesome for having tough and ruthless. But they're also good if you're going to play like a fort game with fortifications. You can play this faction and your commander gains a Castilian special rule. It makes his command range the inside of your fortification, which is great because I have a palisade fort and forts are really fun to put on the table for a land battle. But they can do a little bit of everything. They have that awesome, the end of the turn, if you have more strike points than you did at the previous turn, you remove a point of fatigue from everybody, which is fantastic. And they're really fun. I know Jason was saying that he really liked them in our Discord, but they are so much fun. I usually don't even bother with the support units because the core units are typically so much fun.
Yeah, the African militia too with the lances I think are another really sleeper good unit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, elusive, quick, and brawlers.
I'm jealous. I play with lances all the time, and it's like you get elusive and quick on these guys.
Mm-hmm.
That's really good. Brawler. Oh yeah, and brawlers. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a bucket of fun. You can play this across 5 or 6 different games, and you don't need to play the same style twice, and that really makes it attractive to me as a list. And again, I tend to play Pirates Unaligned in Dutch, and I really love the Dutch. They're just I don't want to keep repeating myself, but it's fun. You can take an entire swarm of the crappy mility and just, bring a swarm of gun lines and just, I'm going to bring more muskets than you have dudes, or you can kit it up and have some really professional kind of army style play. You don't get the platoon action, but I don't think you really need it. And if you're doing a fort, you get access to artillerymen and Z-Leiden. So if you're playing in a fort, I believe you get access to, if you bring a palisade, you get an extra, basically your fortification can take artillery. I believe I don't have my book with me, but you can take an extra unit that has the artillery crew or expert artillery crew special rule. So if you're going to be inside a fort, you can take Z-Leiden and just take away their pistols, and you have some really awesome cannoneers. Like, it's just, they can do everything. If you're going to fight on land, they can do everything. There is nothing they can't do. You can take them at sea if you really, really, really wanted to, but there's better lists for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we gather from Dan's list of his top 3 factions is don't sleep on the Dutch on land.
Don't.
Yeah, they're pretty solid on land as well.
Everybody's tough until the British come in and take a pot shot shooting like buccaneers at your unit that's got a couple fatigue on them.
Mm-hmm.
And they can take pistol sidearms too, so they're not even that bad in melee. They're just good all around units.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I can really say. Otherwise, I'll just be repeating myself. They're awesome.
I agree. I think those are some really good Dutch land units, and that's a really good Dutch land faction. So that was our land factions, top 3 favorite for each of us. We're going to be back next time we record. We're going to do the top C factions for each of us. I personally like C quite a bit, and so and I'll also be interested to see what these other 2 guys put on their list. So tune in for that. We'll do that one next, episode 11. But do we have any announcements before we leave? I know I put in a couple of events coming up. One of them is Fall In. That is November 1st through the 3rd in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I think Fernando is probably going to be around for that one.
Yes, I am.
Are you planning on running anything, or are you just...
Not really. I think Tyler will be planning the Great Swan fight there. I don't know if there will be anything else besides that, but I will be there.
Yeah, I want to play the Great Swamp Fight sometime. We gotta do that at Adepticon sometime or something.
Yeah, it's actually pretty fun.
Next on the list, I know this is an event up near Jason. It's Plunder Like a Pirate Day on September 21st. He's doing a narrative tournament. I'm planning on making the trip up there for it. He's offered me a bed to crash on after the event, so I don't have to drive the 4-hour drive back home immediately after. So that's very nice. But yeah, I'm gonna be there for that, and I'm not playing a list that was on my list. I'm doing some kind of because so the rules for this narrative tournament is you're playing 3 games. You're playing a land game, an amphibious game, and then a sea game, and it all has to be the same faction all the way through. So you have to play a land game with whatever faction that you're playing the sea game with at the end. And what I've done is I've taken the Franco-Spanish militia, and I'm just playing a Spanish list and then a French list at the end.
Oh, that's cool.
So I was just like, it's the same faction, but I'm going to play 2 different nations. It's fine. I don't have to remember any special rules, because the only special rule for that faction is bad, and if I only take one nation's units, I get to ignore it. So that'll be fun. Never done anything like that, so I don't know if that type of event has ever happened before, so this might be an experiment. But anywho, we've also got Adepticon next year coming up. I don't know exactly when that is in March, but that's pretty long way away, and it's going to be in Milwaukee, Wisconsin this year, or next year. And I think that next one is you, Dan, so I'll let you talk about it.
So the Size 2 250-point C tournament is going to be on October 12th. It's going to start at 1 p.m. The restriction is 250 points, 1 Size 2 ship, or 2 Size 1 ships, and it will be at Evolution Games in Fort Worth. Go to the Evolution Games website to go ahead and sign up. It is a $15 buy-in.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. When you said you couldn't bring more than one size 2 ship at 250 points, I was like, that's going to have to be some hefty boys on that
Yeah.
thing.
We had a guy bring a list that was the British Royal Navy on a Corvette, and it kicked a lot of ass. So it's going to be really zany. It's basically short, quick, small actions. I know we'll be using the Adepticon tournament packet basically as the scenarios and everything. That's really not going to change as far as the scoring. So if you played at Adepticon or you played at a Pigment tournament, that's kind of the format it's going to be. It's just going to be limitations on your list because you're only allowed one size 2 or basically 2 size 1 ships, and it's 250 points. So I'm hoping that we see lots of big beefy commanders going at it on itty bitty boats.
Yeah, that's another thing you can fill your points out with is the commander, because the way you've done it is you've basically limited everybody to 4 units. And so yeah, that's going to be interesting. I'll try to save some lists from that to look at.
Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely the top 3 list I'm going to take a look at and see. Yeah, it's going to be so much fun.
Yeah. Okay, well, for more Blood and Plunder content, you can go to bloodandpigment.com and check out all the material we have over there. We have articles on ships, nations, factions, terrain, painting guides, battle reports, black powder articles, anything you can think of, really. So go check it out. You can also go check out our YouTube channel. I know Joseph is MIA today, but I know he's been working on a lot of YouTube stuff, so you should probably see some new videos coming out pretty soon. And you can also go drop us a few doubloons in our Patreon if you appreciate our content. We'd really appreciate that. And that's at patreon.com/bloodandpigment.
And as always, keep your dice ready to win at your back, Yar Har.